Thank God I remember to record before we started. So, Siddharth, thank you so much for joining me today and for agreeing to speak about maritime law, which is something I don't know anything about other than the spelling, and knowing that it has something to do with navigation and shipping. And that's the simplest way I can put it. But there's so much more. And you've really had this nice global, rounded experience within this one niche, which is very rare for somebody who's passed out when we all have passed out, because we were like running after every law firm job that we could get. So it's really rare how you did that at that time. So I wanted to start from the beginning. And can you take us back to why did you become a lawyer, and from the time to your law school to now, what has your journey been like?
Thank you, Jenna. Firstly, I'm super happy to be on this show and just on this podcast rather, and then share a bit of the stories. Listen, I mean, as weird as this sounds, law for me was not a choice from family or any of that sort. In fact, I had no clue. I had no connection with law whatsoever. My parents are doctors, and my dad's a doctor. So I was brought up saying, "Oh, you should become a doctor always." But anyway, come past my 12th grade, I think I had interests outside of my education, or let's say some lady love kind of thing, which probably got me to join the same course as she was doing. So let's put it that way. That's how I started law. But I studied in ILS Law College, of course, in Pune. And the first 4 years of my life, it was like, oh, I really didn't care about going to college. I rarely went to college, as most of us didn't. Attendance wasn't mandatory. But around 5 years of law in ILS, in my 5th year, I started becoming a bit more serious. I got asked by the librarian, "Are you from this university?" when I was going to the library in the 5th year. So anyway, 5 years of law was basically the time when people say they're really studying. I was actually just partying around, socializing and meeting people. Come passing my 5th year, I landed up in a job. I found shipping was interesting. It was a niche. Like you said, most people don't know about shipping. I had a friend of mine who had done some exposure in shipping. I thought it was interesting. So I had the choice of doing a master's or going ahead and, or pursuing a job. And I didn't want to do corporate work. I thought it was absolutely boring. Sorry for my ignorance, but it was boring according to me where I was. Anyway, I applied for this job in a firm called Bose Mitra in Bombay, which is a Calcutta-based firm, also with an office. It's now the leading shipping firm in the country. And surprise, surprise, they gave me a job. So I stumbled upon a job there. I'd applied for my master's in maritime law. I got the admission at the University of Southampton, but I said, I'm going to defer it so that, so I can study and get some work experience. And really the journey for me as a lawyer began really when I started working Bose Mitra. And that was 5 years. I worked there for 15 months at the time, but I learned a lot about shipping. From there on, my life is just, I've fallen in love with the subject. It's one of the, as we keep talking about this a bit more, it's a unique subject, but it's one of the oldest and most obvious things of law. Shipping is, it's so obvious that and we'll talk about this later. But yeah, so 15 months I was there, I worked there, got a base. Then I went and did my master's. Then I worked in Singapore to get some international exposure, because shipping has so much international exposure. And, as a lawyer, you learn on jurisdictions. Things didn't work out the best in Singapore, according to me. I was probably too young to go in. There were expectations probably which were different. So I came back to India with the same firm, Bose Mitra. Then I worked there for 4 years again, till I got offered something with a shipping company, and I went on an in-house role, right? And we were discussing about this before, how in-house roles are really taken for granted in India, or generally. But I work with one of the biggest ship owners. We had about 150, 200 ships, which is a lot. So I do their legal advisory work. And now I moved to Dubai a few years ago. Now I work with another shipping company called MUR, which is a big bulk carrier company and stuff like that. So that's my journey. In the middle, I've done, like I said, my master's and qualified as an English solicitor as well.
So
yeah.
for those, you have a really good journey. And what I really like about your journey is that from the fifth year, even though you claim that you didn't do much. And I can relate, because I think as localites, we just are like, okay, fine, it's just, next door, it's in the same city, so we're not
Yeah.
very serious about the studies, at least for the first few years. So I can relate to that. But even then, from the beginning, you liked one field of law and you really went into it. Even your masters, you said, okay, I want to do it in maritime law. So that is something I find very interesting, at least from where I come. Like, I was not like this, I was all over the place. But then for somebody who doesn't know maritime law, because it really is a field that is sort of closed in the sense, it's not a field that, you have a lot of practitioners who are doing commercial litigation or commercial or any other corporate law. So for somebody who doesn't know what is maritime law, and if you're speaking to, let's say, students or young lawyers, how will you like explain to them what is maritime law?
So I think you're right. It's a niche, and in India, it's even a smaller niche, considering the arbitration and litigation situation in India generally. Having said that, listen, I think people keep forgetting this, and I keep telling people 90% of the world's trade happens by sea, right? So you think about grains, you think about, the biggest hot topic in India right now is oil. How does oil come from Russia to India, for example? It's coming by ships, right? So think about this. It's a logistics chain. People understand Amazon. It's the easiest example, saying, oh, things are coming to my house, but things are coming from abroad. How are they coming? They're coming on container ships, right? So again, shipping has your day-to-day experiences of every pulses you eat, or anything you can use, you can think about, which is not in India, is brought by ships, including cars from East Coast of India to West Coast, or West Coast to East Coast, depending what it is. So it's very difficult to explain, but let me put it this way. If for lawyers or for students who read about contract, third-party contracts, for example, or law of damages, when it comes for like the principle of Hadley-Baxendale, these are all shipping judgments, right? So shipping has a lot of history in that sense. But I do on a day-to-day, like I will think about a car. This is the easiest example to give. If you're driving a car on the road, what are all the issues you can have? You can have a collision with another car. That kind of disputes we do. A car basically gets stuck in a muck in a beach. We go to these beaches, we want to take our cars across, and then it gets stuck, and it's called grounding. We have pollution. When oil leaks from the ship or from a car, we don't care about it on a bike or a car in India, but it's on a ship, you think about it. So those are, we distinguish between dry and wet. Wet are incidents which happen, like accidents or pollution. Dry side is more contractual. So it's very difficult to put in a nutshell, but let's say you're renting a ship out. That's what you do. Various disputes come. Ships are not performing as they're required. Ships' engines are not performing as they have been warranted. So it's a wide variety, and I'm sorry, I'm going probably all over the place over here, but the fact of the matter is, it's basic contract with a shipping twist to it, which brings around a lot of jurisdiction beyond your own country.
Yeah, I think that's the most interesting part, because then, private international law will also sort of come into what you do, conflict of laws, all that. And then you'll have a portion where there are no laws, like high seas. What do you do there? Do you do even like piracy and things like that?
So, yeah, like there's two things to it. Public international law and private international law, both comes to it. Like you said, high seas, there are laws. We have something in shipping which we call the SOLAS, which is basically a convention, international convention, which has been brought into legislation in a lot of countries. You have rules of navigation, which have come through customary practices and conventions as well. Piracy, I've done work for the Indian government on piracy for the companies when I was working in the law firm. You do deal with piracy. Fortunately, it's not been as rampant as it used to be. It's gone down a bit. It's still there, but it's yes, I've done piracy issues, and it's piracy. Yeah, it's interesting. Let me put it this way. I've also done which is interesting for people who generally is murders on a ship or stabbing incidents on a ship, people going missing on a ship. And these
how do you go missing on a ship? Like there's a ship and there's water, no? How can you go missing?
Yeah, because
you fall into the water.
You could fall into the water for multiple reasons.
Yeah.
And, this is a conversation for some other time, but people on a ship are in water for 6 months, 8 months sometimes. They don't see land often. And life is not always easy. I mean, the problems we talk about today on land, you think about it in 6 months when you're on the ship, it's a longer contract, you're not with family usually. So it can create issues. But listen, the sea can be as calm as you think it is, as we see in photographs, and it can be absolutely violent as we know, right? And there are incidents which happen from time to time. So yes, there are a lot of interesting cases we've done. Unfortunately, there have been deaths, but also incidents, but we've had to manage this. It's there.
So, just to clarify, in case somebody has this question, when you say disputes, what is the forum of the dispute resolution? Only arbitration, maritime courts, like how does it go?
Yeah. So I would say there are two general forums like you would find in any other commercial matters. One is arbitration, of course, and one is courts. And I'll give you from an Indian perspective, because we're probably talking to an Indian audience more. In India, the practice predominantly is interim measures. So you probably do two kind of practices. When I say interim measures, I'm talking broadly. There's something called arresting of ships. So I have a claim against you. You own a ship. Your ship is in India, say in Bombay. I go and arrest the ship for my claims against you. So it's a security action check. That proceeds to litigation. When you have a bad case, you file a case in India because the case will take so long that you force a ship owner to come and settle with you, right? So those are the forums in litigation. Arbitrations, a lot of disputes get arbitrated. When you're talking about Indian government companies who do contracts, you're doing arbitrations in India. But the big charters of India, the big boys like Adani's and the Reliance of the world, will do English law. So they will have contracts which are governed by English law. Mostly, and I don't say it's not a standard rule, because of the routes of shipping and how England has evolved as a legal system. The certainty has meant that a lot of arbitrations are either conducted in England or conducted under English law with a seat somewhere else. So most of my work in India was doing a lot of arrest for like 5 years of experience or 5-6 years of experience, or doing a lot of enforcement of awards. An award has come from England and you're doing it. You did a bit of shipping litigation here and there, but very rarely did it go all the way to a trial, things like that. I did a few arbitrations, like probably about 30 arbitrations in my time in the firm. So that's basically, that's the forum, and that's the practice. I mean, most Indian law firms will do about 20 to 30 arrests minimum in a year.
That's more than what I thought, actually.
Yeah,
that's more than...
Yeah, it's quite a bit, actually.
Yeah, it's quite a bit. Now, because you mentioned about English law, you've given a really nice segue into my next question, which is about you doing, now you're also a solicitor, England and Wales. And is why did you think of doing that along? Because you're having a good practice, everything's going well. What did it add to you? Why did you think of doing it? What is the process of doing it for somebody who doesn't know? How does it help you?
Yeah, I think there are multiple things. I think firstly, let me put it this way: education / qualification. I mean, it's very old school, but I don't think it goes to waste, right? So the starting point is that. Secondly, why I did it personally is, like I said, shipping, or whenever you're dealing with international jurisdictions, cross border jurisdiction issues, you're not only dealing with Indian law. It's not restricted to Indian law. So you also pick up another law and you try reading about it. But of course, that does not mean English law. You're doing the law from everywhere else. Shipping is peculiar. It follows a lot of English law. Even in India, we have a tendency of following English law, not only in shipping, but other fields as well. But anyway, for me, because I was doing 60 to 70% of my work in English law, I said, okay, you know what? Qualification makes sense, because even with my master's, people can still ask you, wait a minute, are you qualified to give an English law advice? Because you're actually not. And, in India, we give an advice on all laws, but technically you're not. And my ultimate aim was to try getting a job abroad or moving abroad, right? And when you start applying for jobs abroad, you're firstly an Indian lawyer, right? Your passports are difficult. Your passport A is difficult to move around. Being an Indian lawyer, there are different thoughts when you talk to people. There are Indian lawyers who've done amazingly well abroad, but Indian lawyers are always like, I'm not sure. We've not seen the best quality with Indian lawyers. So for me, I couldn't change my passport, and I didn't want to change my passport. I said, you know what? I don't want to get filtered out because of my passport, because that's fine if my passport filters me out. But from a qualification perspective, the first question they'll ask you, are you English qualified? And I'd be like, yeah, well, I've done English law for the past 10 years of my life. Yeah, but are you English qualified? And that became a stumbling block for opportunities abroad, even though you were qualified. When I say qualified, experience in that sense, it helped there. Also, when you go to, general counsel levels in international companies, for you to stand a good chance, it's good to be English qualified. But I would only recommend to someone to do English qualifications if they are open to the idea of working abroad. And this may not be a plan today. Like 10 years down the line, I might want to move to Singapore or Dubai or Hong Kong or wherever. That kind of a thing helps. And yeah, so it's something I would recommend, but only something to someone who intends to go abroad at some point of their life, or keep that option.
And this is not just in shipping. It can be in any other field of law as well.
Well, it's absolutely to become it's in every field. And the exam, maybe the exam is, I did 6 modules. It includes property, criminal, civil. So you're basically doing like an Indian style solicitor exam with all subjects. And it doesn't make a difference in shipping or not. No.
And when you because you spoke of the exam, I'm just going to ask you a little more about it. What do you need to do in order to qualify to take the exam? Do you need a specific amount of work experience, like so many years? You need some amount of basic qualification elsewhere and then something else, because you also have a master's degree. Did that help you?
The master's degree does not help with the qualification. That's probably the easier answer at the moment. See, the thing has happened in England now because of the EU exit. They've changed the qualification process. So what I did was I just cleared in 2022, by the way, this year. But I was in the old system. I was in the older system where they had to give 2 exams called the QLTS, which is Qualified Lawyer Transfer Scheme. Now they've got something called the SQE. And to be very honest, if you have passed your law degree in India, you can give the exam for the SQE. But I am not very, very familiar with the SQE system. So if anyone is looking for it, the SRA, or the Solicitor Regulatory Authority of in UK, has a brilliant write-up on their website. So I would really recommend someone to do it. But you have to do your law degree. And even if you're not a lawyer, with certain work experience, you could still do the SQE and stuff like that. So there is a path for qualification there. But I'm sorry, but I won't be able to really help you.
Yeah, that's
but
fine.
Check out the website. That's basically it.
And now that you spoke about going global and speaking about you're working in Dubai now, how is it like working in Dubai? Because this was a question that I had before I met lawyers in Dubai, and I spoke to them, but I was like, okay, so you are India qualified and then you got a job in Dubai, and with your India degree, okay, like it's not that you have an with your India practice sanad or whatever. It's not that you have a license to practice in Dubai or in Singapore or elsewhere. So first of all, how is it? How do you? Is it easy to get a job there? Can you use your Indian advocate's license to work? And what is the way that you can have a professional experience there in Dubai?
So there are a few things. I mean, just to be like, before we started the podcast, I did mention this as well, that I'm not Dubai qualified, so I don't have a license to practice in the UAE. I don't think any of us do. And you need to know Sharia law. And I have no personal experience of meeting any Indian lawyer, or as a matter of fact, even like an English lawyer who's Sharia law qualified. So I don't practice. So for my personal self, I don't practice Dubai law at all. But Dubai is one of the centers of international trade, like England is, like Singapore is, like Hong Kong is, the US is. So what happens is a lot of international companies are set up here, right? So because a lot of international companies are set up here, there is a need for qualified lawyers, not only from India, from various places, right? And because most of these companies are doing international companies are doing trade outside of UAE, but based out of UAE, they need lawyers who are not necessarily qualified in the UAE because it makes no difference. So I work purely on English law. Like 80% of my work is in English law. I'm not even using my Indian law degree or my Indian law qualification at all. All right. And that's the case with a lot of people, whoever's working here, right? Do you need, how do you get a job? There's no straitjacket, right? There's nothing, I can't tell you, okay, do ABC and you get it. However, I will point this out. The kind of field you are in determines whether you have an opportunity in Dubai or not, or the UAE or globally anyway. If you're a hardcore criminal lawyer in India, the chances of you getting a job in a foreign jurisdiction which has a completely different criminal jurisprudence is quite difficult. So if you're doing something with international favor, I think that helps. Eventually, it's how you sell yourself as a lawyer. It's what kind of disputes you do. If you're doing contracts is a matter of English, right? Generally, starting point. So you don't need to be there. So I don't have any tips, but listen, it took me 10 years to get a job in Dubai. So, and I know people who have lesser experience, may not be the same kind of versatility or whatever, but they have jobs. So there's no straitjacket rule, unfortunately. But I would just tell you one thing is, don't think that you will get a job abroad just by doing criminal law, or like hardcore property law in India and say, I will get a job in Dubai, because for an employer, they'll be like, wait a minute, Indian property law is different than UAE. So you need to round your CV, round your experience to something which caters to the international market and the specific local market. And let me just bring this also to a conclusion saying, Dubai is one of the few places where there's a lot of Indians already there. A lot of Asians, South Asians there. That does help in hiring Indians generally. But it's a challenge because you're competing with lawyers from all over the world. You're competing with European lawyers, English lawyers, Singaporean lawyers, everywhere. So it's a different market altogether. But yeah, there's no straitjacket rule. Let me put it this way. Just keep working hard.
So essentially it is, which is the point that I really like that you brought up, that, the field that you are in, I don't think most people would have thought of it this way, but the field that you are in determines whether you can, whether that jurisdiction will welcome you or not, whether there is a need for you to fit in over there or not.
Yes.
And the other thing that I took from what you said is you don't need any specific additional qualification to be more marketable in Dubai or maybe even elsewhere. And certainly no need for you to get locally certified with a bar or whatever.
Yes.
You still have, as long as you have a niche that is relevant to the market that you want to go into, that's enough.
That should be sufficient.
Yeah.
And that's my view. Of course, I will always encourage people to go get further education.
Get more. No, but this is a good starting point, because I've been speaking to a lot of first year rights, and I keep saying this on the podcast to most of the guests who come, because I'm constantly surprised at how different they are from how we were. And so maritime law seems to be a really there's a lot of interest in maritime law and in shipping, and I want to do this and I want to do that. I want to do international arbitration in shipping. I mean, there's so much specification even at first year level that I'm actually afraid of for this generation.
I agree with you. When I talk to them, as not to the generation before us, I mean, listen, they're far smarter than what we were. They have far more information than what we had. They're very, they know what they want. But there is a tendency, what I feel, of super specializing or using fancy words. And that's every generation. As you grow as a lawyer, you have to stand out, you start using fancy words. When people say, I want to do international arbitrations, and I say, okay, you've done international arbitrations, but how is that different than shipping arbitration? What is the definition of international arbitration? Yes. So the basic fundamentals are the same.
Yes. Correct.
Right? It's contract law.
Yeah.
It's evidence law. Yeah. It's basic things that way. Arbitration in, could be a master in Indian arbitration and not be doing arbitration in India at all. right? You'll be doing English arbitration. And and this is an experience that I really picked up when I was doing my master's, is I was talking to people who were professors there who, 15 years, arbitration experts and stuff like that. And they were clueless about the issues that you face in Indian law. And they were even surprised that these were issues in India, right? So when I realized that, listen, you can be a master in one jurisdiction, get your footing there. It's all super cool to say, oh, I'm an international arbitration lawyer, but that has really no definition, right? So I would really encourage students to keep themselves open, at least in the first, after 5 years of law, 1 year doing education. But then, the first 3 years of your practice, especially, be open. Don't come with saying that, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that. And, there are things which come in and out in law all the time.
Yes.
And that's basically what I would just tell them.
Yeah. Again, you've given me an amazing segue to the next question, which is because we're speaking about students. And I told you that there is this great interest in maritime law. For somebody who's a student, aside from what you just said, which I completely agree with, that don't be so fixated international arbitration in shipping. I will only focus on that, So aside from that, what are some of the tips that you will give a student if he or she wants to get into maritime law practice and make a career, like something like what you've made, make a sort of global career in this field?
So again, no straitjacket rules, right? There's this, I was just reading something in the morning, I wish I could undo all the things I did in the past. I didn't do enough of internships. But when I speak to students now, some students get in touch with me, or some people who just passed out. The thing with shipping is, like I said, like we discussed, it's a niche, right? You don't have hundreds and hundreds of firms employing you, correct? So I would really recommend a student to start up doing internships. See what shipping is all about. See what the market is all about. The only way you learn about it is when you talk to people, right? So you got 5 years of law, or at least 2 to 3 years where you can do internships, or at least 6 months of internships, or 12 months of internships in your 5 years. Do at least 2 to 3 shipping internships. So that is the only way you will learn or like shipping. There are few universities in India which offer shipping as a course, very few, but I don't think that's the right way. And whatever you read, you're probably, unless you have some connection shipping, which I don't, you're not really going to pick it up. Do internships, see whether you like it or not. And I'll put this as an apprehension which people have doing shipping internships. They are, oh, I've done like a shipping internship. How is it helpful to me if I want to now be commercial litigation, right? I want to do commercial litigation, right? So that's a concern which is there because it's a super specialized field. My answer to that is simple again, and I go back: contract, arbitration, evidence. The 3 pillars, or CPC, for example, civil procedure, the 4 pillars in shipping are not very different than anyone is doing commercial. So my recommendation is work, do internships. Then I can't tell you the bookish knowledge. Do not waste money on a master's immediately after your law school, because master's for me is the easiest answer to do. Oh, I've done shipping masters, but people don't end up working in that field. A master's is the subject to become a master. So I would recommend that work, and then if you like it, then think of further studies. But internships is the right way of really progressing in this one.
And for those who want to pivot from, they are already legal practitioners in another field, they just want to pivot into shipping, because it's again a very different field. How do they just get in, just find a job in a shipping firm? How will that happen if you don't have any background?
Again, I think, listen, I'm just thinking about, I know very few people who've done that jump from not shipping to shipping, but I know there's a big interest with some of the bigger Indian firms to start getting a shipping practice, right? So there are 2 ways. So I'll just probably, with your liberty, I'll just modify. One is jumping into the maritime space in a maritime law firm. But even within a firm which is like a big Indian law firm, they may want to start up a maritime practice. And that is something which is a niche. And I think it can give you another chance, opportunity to beat another partner who's basically, he's an expert in commercial litigation, but not shipping litigation. So people who want to pivot, I think, again, it's about marketability. Remember, you're getting into a niche. So when you're getting into it, think about how, if you don't like it after a year, 2 years, or 3 years, how are you going to sell yourself back to another firm? If I was selling myself to a shipping firm, I'll say, listen, I know court systems, I know CPC, evidence, arbitration, I'm well versed with that. I'm okay with substantive law. I can do this. Of course, shipping terminology has its uniqueness, but it's not rocket science. And I'm ready to learn. And as a lawyer, it sounds very cliche again, but the day you think you know enough or you know a lot, that's the end of your career. Right? So it's basically, if someone wants to pivot, I'll be openness to learning, openness to being surprised how things which you're used to is not what shipping probably looks at it in a very different way. So yeah, that's basically it. Yeah.
To wrap up this segment of the podcast, you've had this really nice global experience, and like you said, you work a lot with English law. So now you can really get a comparative perspective of India, the legal system in India, and how it is abroad. So what do you think are some of the advantages that we have in the Indian legal system, some of the fallouts that we have, and truly I think we all can work together to make our system better, because it's almost broken today. The entire system is almost broken. So
listen, I can probably write a book on the negatives we have in the legal system. I'm not even getting into the political side of it. That's the discussion for another day. And I'll talk about the advantages later, because I want to end this segment on a happier note than a more thoughtful note. Listen, I think there's a bit of a contradiction in India where people think people who are running law firms or lawyers are not running it for profit. I mean, this is, it's an absolute thought from, I don't know, thousands of years ago, right? So when lawyers are not exposed to negligence issues of giving wrong advice, then you get Indian lawyers, and I'm not saying Indian lawyers, sorry, don't get me wrong. And lawyers generally say, oh, don't worry, I'll handle it. If someone comes to me and tells me I want to do a property dispute, I will tell them, listen, I'm not an expert in property. So for me, the client interest is important. But in India, someone who has no idea about shipping will say, shipping.
Yeah, of course. There's no accountability. And you the first thing you said is my pet peeve, okay, about our profession. Like if it's a doctor, your patient can die, it's like that, but we have no accountability. So you're right.
And the accountability has to come from the judicial system, where the entire, I'm talking theory here, but look, there's so much criticism. I've seen that Supreme Court judgment where they were speaking about English law firms being set up in India. We are living in this blind world where law firms are charging tons of money, making tons of profit, but there's no accountability, right? So accountability and the client, listen, in India, clients will say, lawyer, oh, lawyers, oh, liars. It's a joke everywhere, but there's no recourse, right? And if there's no recourse, your legal system will never improve. The quality of lawyers will never improve because you're not reprimanding lawyers. So this is something I feel on an international stage. And as I'm not saying there are tons of Indian lawyers working abroad, but they will give you similar examples where as an Indian lawyer, you have to work that much harder to prove that you're quality. Okay, that's one. Secondly, I think, and I'm going to put this only as a second point, is in commercial matters, there's no cost consequence. Now, cost consequences for people who are listening is you go to a court, you win a judgment, your lawyer's fee is, you're paying tons of money to the lawyer, but you're not recovering anything from the other side. Do you lose a case? There's no exposure. It's the Commercial Courts Act in India has provisions for it. The CPC has provisions for it. But we have taken this view that no. Why should we be putting costs? So now, two things. Lawyers are charging, so clients are paying. You can get rubbish litigation. If you started imposing costs on clients on losing a case, you would have more people talking today with each other saying, let's try settling it. I don't want to pay a lawyer. I'd rather pay you the money, right? So that's the approach I think which is there. We are one of the world's most highly litigious countries in the world. I mean, I don't have the stats with me, but I can tell you in Singapore arbitrations, for example, Indians and Chinese are one of the highest litigation parties, right? We're very litigious. What are we changing? We keep cribbing. We don't have enough judges. We don't have our court systems are slow. This is because we're encouraging people just to come to court, file, with due respect, rubbish, unmeritorious applications, and then those dragging on. Because the court system then allows you to drag the matter on for years and years and years. And it's easy to blame the judges. So cost implication, I think, is important. It will improve lawyer quality, it will improve judgeship quality, and it will improve client quality to try really looking at the dispute in a very commercial manner. And I'm saying this very clearly. I meant it, started it, commercial disputes, not will issues, not family disputes, not marital disputes, completely different field. So yeah, that's the other, the disadvantage of it. And then, like I said, I could write a book, but no, that's not the point. The advantage of the legal system is this. One is the right of audience. We don't have the distinction in India we have the advocate system predominantly, like Bombay wants to be, and Calcutta probably wants to be separate, but the advocate system is generally there, which means that you have the right to audience, which if used properly, it's very helpful because you get the confidence. You can see what is going on in court. You're able to get the access to the court. So that's the one good thing I would believe as an advocate system. It doesn't have the barrister solicitor system. It's a bit biased in my view, which is there. Secondly, I think I think approaching courts is not expensive, and I know it's contradictory to my disadvantage. But because the legal system is designed in a way where approaching courts is inexpensive, it basically allows litigants, and this is, I mean, not commercial, not the big commercial guys, but people like ordinary people to reach to the court seeking relief. And I'm not going to comment on recent examples, but say, for example, you and me could apply to court on a PIL, for example, and, seek relief. It's not that expensive to go to court. So I think that's an advantage of the legal system that we have. So, yeah. That's
very good answer. I'm telling you, Siddharth, I would rate this answer as the best answer we've got on the podcast so far, because both the points that you made are so relevant and really thought out points you've made. Because the first one about none of us having any accountability, that is my pet peeve, but I never thought of the cost angle to it, and I never thought of it like that. In one of my litigations, which we won and the other side lost, and we had put in a hell of a lot of money into the litigation when I was a legal counsel. And so we insisted on costs. We went to division bench on cost. Can you even imagine that it went to division bench on costs? And after doing all this tamjam, you know how much we got as costs? 500 rupees. Like 500 rupees. It was beyond ridiculous what happened to us.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And when it is an international company, you're dealing with non-Indians, foreigners, and they're like, what the hell is happening? And they're screaming, breathing down your neck because they want costs. Like the management wants costs. So you are pushing for costs.
Yeah.
And then what do you have to show? You have 500 rupees to show. It's less than $10. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, let me put it this way. I mean, India is not a unique system where costs are not awarded. I'm not going to say there are costs awarded in India from time to time. There's no certainty on cost. That's the issue as practitioners. America probably has a similar concept, but you know what? In India, unlike the American system, you will have to go to court 20 times to get a judgment, maybe 20 times an understatement to get a hearing. So it's very different, right? So I think in India, where we have an issue of so many judgments pending cases, backlogs, this is a solution. And to what you're saying, my first experience when I came back from Singapore was I had to take an adjournment for one of the clients on a compensation issue. On a death compensation, the husband had passed away. The company had paid the compensation, but as is usual, some lawyers said, you can get more compensation. It's always how it works. It's fine. That's normal. But this case was dragging on for years. I went in there and my entire instructions were to get an adjournment. I got an adjournment and the judge basically fired me for, I think, 10 minutes about how the entire conduct was there. And then he said, I'm going to impose costs. And I said, well, I have no choice but to accept whatever cost you would impose. And it will be 1,000 rupees, And I was like, my clerk was like, sir, tell him like 500. I said, it's 1,000 rupees, like, this is probably my travel cost coming all the way from Nariman Point to the court and going back in a taxi, not in my legal fee. So this is where it becomes imbalanced. And this is what I feel. A lot of unmeritorious dragging on will stop. I'm sorry, but this is philosophical, but this is basically what I feel from a pragmatic perspective. So,
I agree. And I think we can connect a lot more on practical and work-related frustrations like this that we've endured. But to move things along and to go to the next sort of simpler, like the more sort of fun part of the podcast, because I just want to get to know you. Yeah.
You say simpler. I thought it was more complicated.
I know you told me that I'm like all of them seem similar, so I'm going to do my best to ask you from different perspective. But so essentially, it's like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I ask you 5 of something, 4 of something, 3 of something, whatever. And this is just to know you better as a person, and also to take some good tips from, because I've really learned a lot from whoever has come, especially on this question that I'm going to ask you, which is 5 productivity tips or routines. I can use all the help that I can to be more productive. So for you.
So for me, there are a few things I've learned listen, I'm still not productive as I would like to be more productive always. Lesser hours in office would be my productivity, ideally I want to get to that stage. But listen, I thought of this. I thought organization was something which helped me. I was not very organized when I started off, but being very organized, not putting my hands everywhere. I'm doing one dispute. Of course, I have 10 disputes to handle, but when I'm doing it, I'm off everything else. So that's organization. I do it. I do a good job and get out. We are not multitaskers. Men surely are not. Women may be better. But because I believe in being very, very particular what I'm going to do, and I don't give advice to anyone, even in my law firm days, I'm very clear. Organization is helpful. I'm only organized if my file is organized, and I'm organized in my thoughts. So organization, clearly important. Professionalism is another tip. It's ingrained in me. I think if I'm telling you 11 o'clock means I will be there at 11 o'clock. It's a habit, Indian Standard Time. I will not oversell. I will not undersell, but I will certainly not oversell. So it's a professional. It's not a routine or a thing, but it's a tip which I can only tell people because I always look at things in a bigger picture. It's not about my relationship with you today. It's about my relationship 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line, and from a client-lawyer perspective, very simply, it's that. 2 things. Third, I think it's reading. There's no substitute to reading. Unfortunately, we're lawyers in a stream. Having said that, optimum use of technology is very important. So read about how there are technological developments in the legal field and how you as the youngsters will fit in. People like you and me will survive. But there are things like people, if they have the time to Google this, called Ross, the attorney, like Friends Ross, the attorney. It's a legal online platform which is giving you data, research and stuff like that. So as students, you need to see what's going on in the market and how it improves productivity as well. Now, these are the 3 tips, but listen, the 2 most important things. There's life outside of law and life outside of the legal profession. So please get in hobbies, get in interest. You meet new people outside law. We have this incestual relationship between lawyers where we only want to be between ourselves and talk about how you are so great and my firm, I've done a deal of 100 million. Oh, I've done 500 million. It makes no difference. Your salary is in the same, right? And your bonuses are almost similar. But get a life, have your hobby, have your interest. That's a way of socializing. with people as well. So that's very important, and give it time. Don't get burnt out. Secondly is holidays and breaks. It's not linked to your hobby and interest, because hobby and interest is a day-to-day affair. If you're not going to do holidays, you're not going to do breaks, you're going to be living in this cocoon. You see all our senior counsels, you see all the counsels in the Bombay High Court or Delhi High Court, they are going on holidays. In a law firm, you don't have this concept, but you need to. Again, you meet new people, you meet new culture, and you stop living in a bubble. And that's what I would really tell people. Yeah. So
good answer, Siddharth. But my favorite of your answer was the professionalism bit that you spoke about, because internationally we don't see it so much, like especially lawyers like you, or like any even those who are in India who work regularly with international clients or who are part of bigger law firms. There's no problem. Like if you say 11:30, you're there at 11:30, or there at 11:29. Okay, you're not even there at 11:30. We start at 11:30. But then the lawyers, not just lawyers, everybody that we meet on everyday basis, it's like I have to reach at 6 o'clock, and at 5:55 I'm like, I'm still stuck in court. Like, which court? Please explain. Like, and then I can't meet you. Like, can you wait? And it has happened where, especially as legal counsels in an international company, you're taking some of your witnesses who've flown in from other countries because they have to appear before someone, and then people do stupid things like that, or your offices are closed, or you don't respond to emails on time, or the favorite of this generation, which I'm finding shocking. I hope I don't put anyone off by this, but I've had people telling me, I'm really sorry, today's Saturday, I can't work on Saturdays. Like, what's happening?
I think there's a balance, and I'll be very honest. I think there's a balance of working on weekends. I understand where the younger generation comes from. Like I said, they're far more.
Yeah, actually, that's true also. Like, in a way, I do admire them, because we were like, kabhi bhi bulao, kabhi bhi raat ko bhi bulao, we'd be there.
Yeah, exactly. 3 o'clock in the morning, your boss is calling you. 4 o'clock, your boss is calling you. I think the only answer I would tell younger generation is, of course, listen, it's very fluid. We can't talk about working cultures, because working cultures in law firms or any company can be absolutely horrendous too. Professionalism works both ways. You have a professional commitment to do something, you will try finishing your job. And as a firm, as firms as well, they have to be professional, because we're not donkeys running all the time. We can't be as hardworking as donkeys, unfortunately. So yeah, that's where it is.
The next, because you mentioned reading, and it's my favorite topic, because I love to read. Tell me 4 books that you'd recommend anybody should read.
I keep telling this to people, and they find it funny. Like lawyers, again a cliche the lawyers read about. I read a lot of law, but I don't read like books for leisure. So no, but listen, I have completely. There are a few books which I like reading because I think law is strategy. It's a lot of chess, especially in contentious litigation, but also in corporate deals, you're doing a lot of that. So one is The Art of War by Sun Tzu, right? It's a lovely book. And most of these books, which I'm going to say, like, I'm sure the younger generation has read it, but this is a book which I found fascinating. And it's a book where you can really use it in the legal sense, as a lawyer as well. Talking to Strangers, it's a book by Malcolm Gladwell, it's again perceptions about, we as humans and as lawyers, is the worst thing to have is prejudging things. So this book is fascinating about people from different cultures and how different things can mean have different reactions. About how, for example, Hitler was misunderstood by a lot of people. Everyone thought he was a great guy, but what he eventually did was, so it's Talking to Strangers, and that's a very interesting book from a lawyer perspective. I feel as a lawyer, from a human touch perspective. The third thing, because I keep saying law is a business, it's about building a brand, right? So there are going to be these books. Please people should read Phil Knight. It's called The Shoe Dog, the guy from Nike, right? Phil Knight, who was basically Nike founder, and Steve Jobs, his autobiographies. It gives you a perspective about being perfectionist, how you present things we take it for granted as lawyers. It's not important, but it's very important. And the last thing I'll tell people to read, and maybe it's not reading because there's no book, probably. I read a lot of articles of this. This was just a fascinating case for me of O.J. Simpson, right? I mean, there's an entire Netflix series on this, but that's a story for a lawyer to read, to think about all factors which can come in dealing with a judgment, the human interpersonal skills. And I think it's a fascinating story. I mean, we have similar stories in India. The one jury case, which was the last jury case probably in India as well. But this has been recorded really well, the O.J. Simpson trial, where anyone who read it would come to a conclusion that this guy is guilty, but at the end of the day, he was not guilty. And as a lawyer, that was purely strategy and playing on evidence. So those are the things. I mean, I give you an extra thing, but yeah.
Good choice of books. Different. All of them are different genres, basically.
Yeah.
I haven't read Talking to Strangers. Everything else on your list, I have. But how you felt when it comes to Talking to Strangers, I actually felt like that when I read Malcolm Gladwell's Blink. I felt similarly, although the premise is absolutely different. They are antithetical, actually, but that's how I felt when I read Malcolm Gladwell's Blink. Now, even though you have said this in and through the podcast, if there are 3 tips that you want to give young lawyers, general tips for young lawyers.
Listen, I mean, I think this is such a, like I told you, 5 years of law, I never went to law school, right? So, but listen, most people over here, it's the last 5 years of your life where you're going to be studying. Most people. So please enjoy it. Yes, there is a professional life which is going to be very daunting, very hard, a lot of pressures. This is the 5 years of law. Study, but please enjoy your university life. Don't be careless, but enjoy it. Right? This is the last probably years of your life of responsibility. No responsibility that much. Again, the cliche, I think there's no substitute to hard work. Yes, Google gives you easy answers, but Google will give you answers if you know the right question to ask. Important. So, Google lawyers, Google doctors, we've seen how great they're doing.
Yes.
But you're not going to be excelling as a lawyer. You will not hear Mr. Justice Nariman or any of your lawyers, Fali Nariman, reading Google. Even if they had access to Google, Google is a support tool, but it's not, it could be a starting tool only. Third, very important, law is a business. Socialize, meet people outside your stream because those are your clients. Lawyers to lawyers, they're going to be your competitors eventually. So you have to go and meet people beyond. So those are the 3, tips to young students. I never got it as a kid. I always told, oh, wait a minute, padhai karo, study. Yes, studying is important because we all have to pass a lot of degrees, but improve your skills. Interpersonal skills, very important.
And I'm going to, while you were speaking, this just occurred to me, and I did not ask you in the first section, so I'm just going to take a minute to ask you, what about mooting for young lawyers or law students who want to get into shipping law? You think mooting helps, like moot experience?
I actually had that in my mind and I forgot about it. I think mooting is very important. It gives you a flavor of what shipping is all about. There are at least 3 moots that I know of. One, which is done by the University of NLU Odisha on a shipping dispute. I know the one, the National University in Kochi does it as well. And there's this international moot called the IMLA, which happens in different countries from time to time. They have a shipping moot as well. I'm not sure if Bombay was going to introduce something, but I think mooting is a great experience to get a flavor for what shipping is all about.
Because I think this year GLC's moot, I don't know which moot of GLC, one of the moots was on shipping, and so definitely there's a lot of interest among the students on shipping. Okay, so now 2 life lessons that you have learned in and through your life so far.
It's very difficult. 2 life lessons, I think. I struggle with this question a lot. But I'm only going to say, I think maybe I'm with this. I think a story I know. This is a hearsay story, and it's not a story, but it was a lesson to me for sure. Very famous story in a court in Hyderabad where one of the senior counsel was flown from the Supreme Court to do a matter. He reached the court. Someone was already arguing. They were all the same side of the bench, and his counsel with him or whatever who was there before him had already started. He kept on arguing, and the judge was very convinced with the arguments for him. So this senior counsel didn't say a word, and the client was there behind saying, "Listen, I paid this guy tons of money to fly from Delhi to here. Why is he not talking?" About 20 minutes in, I think that the counsel just left, right? And of course, the client started jumping around. And then the instructing advocate went running to the counsel saying, "Listen, my client wants you to talk. You've been paid so much money, so please talk. Say something, court." And the statement was there, and I'm not quoting him, but it was like, "As a lawyer, I am paid not to speak, but to know when to speak." And this is such an important lesson, not only in litigation, but in every field of law, especially when you have a habit of writing long advices and just wanting, "Oh, I've got paid, and the judge has to listen." No, people don't need to listen to you. I need to know to talk when I know I need to talk. And that is the art. Anyone can talk for hours. I can shout. We have great examples on Indian media, news channels, courts, where shouting is happening. It's fine. But the point is, in a courtroom or in court, legal artistry is knowing when to talk and what to talk. And that's the life lesson I think is very important as well. I think that's the one life lesson I want to really share with you is this thing, for example. And the second thing, like I said, I'm touched upon it, is don't go in any field or any discussion saying I know everything. I've dealt with a senior counsel who had no idea about a matter that I spoke to him the first time. The second time, this was like he knows 0, I know 100 in that kind of an issue. Then he knows 50, I know 100. The second time I met him. The third time I met him, he knows 120, I know 100. So what it really taught me is you can never know enough. And you can know, but be open. Read. So the senior counsel could simply say, "Oh, whatever Siddharth is saying, he's got about 7 years experience. I'm going to go with what he knows." And that's it. But he didn't go with that. He took my thing and gave it that much better. So that's another lesson. So keep never, it's such a ordinary thing I'm telling you, but it's so important.
Very, very important, because humility really is extremely underrated. And certainly extremely underrated to your own success as a professional. And then you learn hard lessons, so you might as well not spare yourself the heartache and just stay humble and stay focused. And finally, what is the best advice that you have received?
Many. But again, the one I would like to give, the one I've received, which I would like to share, is probably the more appropriate one, is legal knowledge is 1/3 of the law, or 1/3 of being the lawyer, right? There are things beyond legal knowledge which are important. Again, interpersonal skills, marketing, all those things which come from outside, which is not considered cliche lawyer work. You need to work. Presentations, how you give presentations, how you speak. Those are the things which sell. Knowing law, no client wants to hear 50 pages or 20 pages of opinion. He will want to understand in a nutshell, what is my position, and that's it. And that is something which is very important. That's the life lesson I have picked up, and I will share with students for sure.
Yeah, and most relevant for our jurisdiction, I think, because we are ponderous. We are ponderous when we write, and all of us are trained like that. Even each one of us are trained like that. We are ponderous when we speak, and it's really hard to get over it. Like, I'm struggling. I don't think I'm even like 10% into the journey of being, like you said, tell me in a nutshell, what is my position? That's it. Everything else you can keep with yourself, all of your sections and your, if this happens, then, if that happens, then, but what should happen now, So
I think I work, my immediate senior, the place I work is an English lawyer. And when I write and he writes, I can see the crispness. Listen, English is not our first language. It's probably our first learning language, but it's not our first language. Like people like to, we want to as Indians say English is our first language. No, it's not. It's probably almost first language, but no, it's not. I mean, first, it's, that's wrong. It's a myth. We don't speak crisply because in school we've been told to write long answers, otherwise you will not get marks. But that's fine. It's all law school. You have to, pass. Christmas is very important and being very clear. It comes with time. I mean,
comes with time. No, but it also comes the way you're trained, because it's ironic that we have sort of taken from English law, but they have just dropped that ponderous way of writing like 50 years ago. I think they've stopped writing in that ponderous way, or maybe even longer than that. We continue. We continue writing in the passive voice. We continue, writing one paragraph is one sentence, with putting all kinds of conjunctions in between. And even I learned to change my drafting style from a Queen's Counsel. I was like, what? Not just like through the draft and said, this is rubbish. By the time somebody gets through this draft, they're just going to lose sight of what you're saying. So
I think
that's
you're right.
true.
I'm just going to say one more thing here. Like as recent as 2019, when I initially planned to give my second part of my English qualification, there is a writing test as well. So you have to write legal letters and submissions, whatever they may be. They have these online classes and where they're giving you tips. I did 1 hour of this thing and my mind got crazy because it had to change every way I wrote, right? Everything I was writing, oh, this is how you've written, but no, instead you can write this way. I stopped doing it because okay, I want individuality. I want my own writing style, but I picked up one thing. We could be more bang on the point. And I mean, I deal with a few law firms who I talk to on a very personal level. And I keep telling them that clients are not interested in your case laws. So anyway, that's something which is there to pick up on a larger training perspective and basically it.
Thanks, Siddharth. You've given I love talking to you today because you were very, honestly, you were very prepared because you already had the answers in your mind. But more than that, you've really given thought to what you want to share. And it was so valuable to me, and I'm sure to the audience who's listening and whoever will continue to listen ahead. So thank you so much for taking the time and sharing your time so generously this morning on a weekend. And hopefully I'll see you if I ever come to Dubai.
Or if I come to India.
Or if you come to Bombay. Yeah.
My absolute pleasure.
Yes.
I'm really not happy that you're doing something like this. Like I said,
thank you.
It's not something which we had at a time, but
I hope it, because the law students today are really motivated. As in first year, like you mentioned, you were partying. I was dancing. I was a Bharatanatyam dancer and I was doing professional Bharatanatyam dancing. I'm just showing up for the exams. Had nothing to do with, didn't care so much. But nowadays, the first yearites are really passionate. I mean, I would never be able to say I want to do international commercial arbitration and shipping in my first year. So I think we should give back.
No, I get it. And I think you have enough time to be very focused in life after your 3 years or 5 years of law, whatever you're doing. Please study, but enjoy. Like partying was one thing for me. Sports, I played a lot of sports. Whatever, like I said, hobby, interest. You don't want to be burnt out in 3 years of law.
Yes, very true.
Practicing is I have a more inappropriate way of saying it, but the appropriate way of saying it, as you get your hair white, the more is your value. It works with doctors in India, it works with lawyers in India.
Yes.
So you have a long journey, it's a marathon.
Yes. Thanks, Siddharth. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And
we'll see you soon. Yes, thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.